Hello and welcome back to the Backstage Pass, or if it's for the first time, a warm welcome. This is a show that goes behind the scenes of the performing arts. It has been an absolute privilege to talk with fantastic guests and allow you into their world and inspire you in so many ways. This beauty has had people full of emotion. With her breathtaking performances, I myself was so moved watching her, and I'm so happy she said yes to coming on my show. Introducing one of my favorites, classical burlesque performer, Vicky Butterfly. Vicky is the daughter of an Irish showgirl and an eccentric Viennese aristocrat. Her work reflects her bohemian upbringing, notable as a real innovator. She uses contemporary technology alongside a richly decadent aesthetic and lavishly sensual showmanship, incorporating her background in theatrical design alongside training in disciplines including ballet, lyrical dance, opera, and circus, as well as an insatiable desire for literature and history. Now, in this podcast, I had the mother of all colds. I had a cough for, I don't know, weeks and weeks. So please excuse the ahs and the sniffles and stuff that was happening. I couldn't edit it out. And also the audio quality for Vicky isn't quite as good as normal, but I'm hoping that because of her just fantastic way of speaking and just, it was the most wonderful chat. I think that you're really, really going to enjoy this one. So let's go. You are wildly recognized as transcendent beauty. You are so exceptional, but your journey, it didn't start there. It started in theatre design. So how did it go from that to being on stage?
It was a bit funny. So I was talking about this at a wedding on Saturday. So there's usually someone going, "Oh, you must meet my goddaughter. They do this." And she went, "Oh, because she designs dresses." I think, "Well, I've never designed dresses." And it turns out that the godmother wasn't entirely sure what course her goddaughter had done either. And we'd actually been on the same course 1 year apart. We must have come across each other. The only thing neither of us could remember when we graduated. So I think we took the same cultural studies course it was a lady who'd written a book called The Showgirl. It was about the history of showgirl costumes. And there are quite a few other people who have gone on to work in various elements of the performing arts who were all there in the same room at the time. And so I really took to this course, and it was one of my themes for my dissertation. And in addition to all the kind of internships that you could do or work experience, I'd actually worked for a lot of the costume houses that existed at the time anyway, so I wasn't really sure what else there was for me to do. I ended up becoming the assistant of the costume designer who did all the shows for the Whoopee Club, which at the time was the only burlesque club in variety in Europe.
Okay.
The main singer was Paloma Faith. It was a very exciting time, and lots of amazing artists, some of whom I still work with now, were also involved. And there weren't as many performers as there were of every discipline that there is today. So I ended up working for her and working for the Whoopee Club, and they just asked me to do performances. And because I'd done a little bit of performance art, I said yes, and I carried on doing it.
That's amazing. And did you train in dance?
I've done some dance training. I hesitate to say because not on a level like you. But I did study from a small child, as a ballet, love lyrical dancing. But then I went back as an adult student as well at the place. I tried to keep up.
Yeah. But you still had a little bit of a foundation to see you through.
I hope so.
Yeah, because when I've seen you, I thought, well, you must have danced for years. You've got such a lovely way of dancing, and you're so poised. You would have thought you'd been dancing for a long, long time.
Thank you. I did start when I was 4.
It's a bit inbuilt then.
I don't go to class anymore, and a lot of time when I see video, I do think I've got into really bad habits.
Oh yeah.
I'll look at something and there'll be something I do, and I think if I still had I can hear the voices of my teachers.
Oh really?
telling me off.
Good to have that internal voice sometimes, like extend a little bit more. Yeah.
What are you doing?
Oh no. It must be quite difficult when you see footage of yourself, because obviously that's a performance that you can't get back. That's something that you've done. So you can't almost dwell on it, but it's really, really good to use that to then go, the next time I do that performance, I'm going to be aware of that bad habit.
I think I mean, that's it. Once you've done it, when you've done something more than, you've made the same mistake more than twice, it's a habit. That's what my teacher used to say. It's not, you're not making a mistake again. You've got a habit. And I think most performers you always want to do a do-over. You come off stage and the first thing you think is, oh, I wish I could do that again now.
Yeah. Yes.
And then that's the take that the audience get. I wish they could get it now. But obviously, it's not like doing a rehearsal. You get on stage and then run it again. It is just, you have to do it twice in front of the audience, which is why I do enjoy 2 show nights.
So you do the same act twice, but
if you're doing a show like a 7:30 show and a 9:15 show. Don't know why I'm so specific. It must be a particular season of shows I've done, but once you do it, it's always the second show. That's why you always say, if you're going to come to a show, please come to the second show.
Yes, the first one's a warm up.
Well, it has to be the same energy.
Yes, yeah, of course. But yeah, it sort of gets you in the mood. I've remembered, you've triggered something in me now, because I remember rehearsing again and again and again, taking it on stage. But it's funny because the things that would work in the studio are actually different on stage. And it feels different in different venues. That same act, you feel a bit different about it depending on when you're performing it. Is that the same for you?
I think that's probably why I like doing it. It's why, although I've done more acts in my time, and given preference, I like to keep my hands in with doing something unusual on a regular basis. It's why if I'm doing like a big show, I do tend to do the same acts again and again, because most of the tech is working out how you're going to adapt something to. It's nice when you get to work with the same lighting people for maybe 2 shows in a row, like a couple of weeks ago I did, but that's by no means guaranteed. It's going into a different venue every night and having to do your tech rehearsal every day. Sometimes you do have to do what's reliable. So if I am doing a series of shows, I like to find a mirror backstage, and what I tend to do is, once it's set for the venue or set for the set of shows, I'll do if there's a particular show that has a flight of stairs that I've got to incorporate into the timing, like you've got to re-choreograph, you can't just walk into the space. And it's not like some acts are more playful and they just go on, they play with the audience. I do have my slightly set it's loosely set choreography, but I like to take a few bars in a mirror and then just work on that, do almost like a studio session with like maybe a section of four bars.
Yeah.
Each show.
Yeah, you have to work with the venue, and yeah, sometimes you're going onto a stage and the stage is rigged, or there's stairs going onto it, or stairs going up to the stage, or there's a lot that you have to accommodate, isn't there? And the audience don't see it. They just go, well, that's the act. But if they were to see it in a completely different venue, I wonder what the feeling would be.
Some shows, it's interesting, like bringing a feeling of consistency. And that's why one of my first props wasn't maybe one of the things that people think about when they think about the shows that I do. It wasn't the moon. It's not about the Fabergé egg. The first prop I ever, my friend of mine, the wonderful magic Sean Mooney, did all the building, and I did the painting and the soft design, and it was a travelling theatre. So it's a Victorian theatre with boxes, wings. You can pack it down. I always used to think you used to be able to pick it in a mini, but I think I've misremembered. There isn't a part of it that's bigger than a metre though. So that was the first thing. It was having a consistent background to work with.
Wow.
So that was it's something that's very important to me on some level. You're very spoilt when you actually have a theatre, but sometimes you remember that you are blessed to have tabs.
Yes. Yeah, I remember dancing on a stage that was, no, it wasn't a stage. No, you definitely couldn't call it a stage. Maybe a podium, round podium. And I chose to do an act where I was spinning on point, which felt like on a postage stamp. And I was absolutely terrified because what if you were to come off point? Well, then I would fall off this tiny podium. And there's so many elements to it that you have to contain, sort of keep composed. You can't let the audience feel that. But yeah, when you're on a stage, you can just go big. Everything can just expand within those small sort of stages. Very different.
It's knowing what you're comfortable with on a certain type of stage, and actually a small central podium stage, because there's an act that I suppose it's probably my signature act that I do most, when the rain falls, the night flowers bloom, because the first time I did it, I was booked for a very long run of shows. It was for La Clique, and I worked with them for 5 years. And their setup is a Spiegel tent, and there is a central rostra. So when it came to actually setting it, I set it in that space. So I know actually, if anything, although it looks like it wouldn't fit, that's the most comfortable I am, unless you've got very small lights with very sharp edges that I can get caught on. But I think a lesson I've actually learned as well is someone else that I've worked with in the Spiegel show, who's one of the best seal wheel performers in the world, Joe Moss. And the podium was only slightly larger than the seal wheel. When it spins like a coin on the stage, you think, well, it could just go off. Exactly, he said it could, but it's very unlikely to. But even for one of the best performers, I've seen it go over, it just hit off the side. And what can you do after that? You just have to get back up again.
Yes.
Just pick it back up.
I've got to ask, why butterfly? What does butterfly mean to you?
I think it's quite an appropriate name. I didn't actually choose my stage name at all. I think I thought I spent a long time thinking about it would have definitely been a nature name. I'm not going to say what I was thinking. Maybe a little bit darker. I've always been a bit of a goth. And I remember thinking about this name because when I started performing, people weren't billed necessarily. It was like you'd have the kind of the actions in like more of a performance art in a nightclub environment. And no one actually was, there weren't flyers who weren't, but when people introduce you, people know who you were. They wouldn't necessarily, it wouldn't be like there'd be a poster and a flyer. There wasn't, back then there were digital cameras. People would take photos on film at clubs and scan them to the website in about 3 weeks.
Yes.
And that's how it was. And I was thinking about the name for sport. So someone said, what would you like to be on the flyer? I was so excited. My first time. And then she said, you took too long. And I was like, so what did you call me? And she said, Vicky Butterfly. Because my name is Vicky, Victoria, and my hair was always very long and well, I used to straighten it, but I had flowers and butterflies in it. And because there are quite a lot of people called Vicky, she said, I called you Vicky Butterfly because if I say Vicky Butterfly or Vicky with the butterflies to people, they'll instantly know which Vicky it was. And I just kept the name. And then I learned more about, I did a certain kind of movement. And when I discovered the Victorian butterfly dances, I thought, well, that's actually what I do. So I should keep that, all the Lowy full of references and just the generic butterfly dancing.
Yeah. But it's a beautiful name. And that's just brilliant, wasn't it? Wow. That's good. That's good. But I love the way that you move and the props that you use and, it's just incredible. I can take myself to performances where you've been dancing and when you're mesmerizing and it's almost otherworldly in a way, like you're there, but you're not there. You're sort of taken somewhere, transported. That's how, to me, it feels when you're performing. It really does take you somewhere else. So I think the butterfly, it's almost like giving, I don't know, I'm probably just rambling now, but giving people this sense of flight, the butterfly in the audience as well, like everybody's having that experience of freedom somehow. It's just kind of how I feel. Maybe I just think too deeply about things, but
Well, I mean, obviously, as you as a stage performer as well, you know the difference between all the different kinds of stage. Often shows where you do have those lighter, more natural characters in them. It's the opposite way from what you think, because it's not if you're sharing the stage in like a show that there's other people there, you can't completely be a butterfly, or you have you're very much not alone out in nature. You are very much there's just lots of people trying not to bump into each other, isn't it?
With all the costumes.
It's actually the variety stage, the cabaret, the burlesque stages. I felt it's very unique in the way that it is actually one of the only big stages where you get to go up and be alone on.
That's really interesting, because as somebody in the audience, you're just thinking about the performance that you're seeing, but there's all that to getting on the stage. There's so much involved in it. The behind the scenes. I mean, how do you feel when you're, off the stage trying to avoid bumping into people before you go onto the stage?
Well, you're bumping into people a lot.
It's like, out of the way, my turn.
I always joke that's how I met my partner. So, yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah. An accidental bump into each other.
No, he was just in the wings between me and the stage, and I was on.
That's amazing.
He always puts the story a bit less kindly, but I didn't tell him to get out of the way.
I love that. So do you have a favourite act? I mean, I know you've got amazing acts, but do you have a favourite?
I think it's probably the two that I do the most. It's the Swan Bride and the Night Flowers. I think for different reasons. I think it's the Swan's a little harder, and it's a harder sell as well. But when it's going, when everything is at the right time, like when every beat hits correctly, that there's no feeling like it. And the other one, I enjoy doing. I enjoy seeing people's reactions. I enjoy anticipating what I'm going to do, and if someone hasn't seen it before, knowing that you're just thinking, you're not going to believe what I'm going to be doing in about. You think you know what I'm going to do in about 30 seconds, but you don't know. When I do the first reveal and it's already a full reveal, and people go, well, I've seen that now, and I'm just going for 30 seconds time. And that's a nice feeling. But when the beginning of that one hits correctly, like sometimes there is a lot of work with the lighting that goes into it before, and sometimes just things, however much you do practice with them, like sometimes lighting, I've had lighting states that have got reversed and the person behind the desk is just stuck because it isn't, as you know, it isn't like you're not usually pushing faders anymore. Everything's programmed cue to cue, and if a cue goes too soon, you can't always take it back. Okay. Especially if you're in an unfamiliar venue.
Yeah, because if you're like opening up and doing a reveal, but the lighting hasn't changed to match the beat, the impact isn't the same.
I mean, even it's no big surprise in that particular act. The first state is a backlight, and then the second stage is a front light, and then the next stage is a blackout. And sometimes I haven't had the blackout. Sometimes a frequent thing is the follow spot operator has not been to the rehearsal. Actually, the last time I did the Night Flowers, and it was no fault of anyone's. Just one of the cues slipped, so there was no backlight. But there was also, because the lights were focused at the front of the stage, there was also no front light.
Oh no!
And there's 1.5 minutes, and I'm doing my thing, and they can't go back, and I'm just going through it, and just going, well, in about a minute they'll be able to see me. Till then, I'm wearing black and dark.
Oh God! And
there's nothing you can do.
No. I guess do you sort of laugh it off and go, well, I've done my best, but what can you do?
You just hope that when it does hit, it hits well enough that no one goes, oh, what was that about?
I don't think people appreciate how important the tech rehearsal is, but it's kind of everything. Been speaking to a lot of people about, the lighting, and how important it is, but not really about the cues. But it's so important to create that impact, isn't it?
it's something I think about a lot, because I did, when I was doing theatre, even when I was at school, we had to do the sound and lighting ourselves. So I like that element that goes into it. And one of my, I think it was my, well, as part of the Whoopee Club, I was a small cog in a much larger machine. But the first residency I actually had was it was for rock cabaret at the Cobden Club, and I used to perform there every month. And it was a new show every month, but we had the luxury of that it was an old 19th century variety theatre. No wings or anything by that point. But the curtains were closed. You had your time to set what you wanted behind the curtains, and then they opened, and everything was under your control. And that's a luxury. A lot of people going into residencies now, you have very professional team, so it's almost something that's taken for granted, that you can go, we'll set these lights and you can make all these kind of impacts. And I'm aware that learning like that was a luxury, because the second long residency I had, we did not even have our own lights. We had it was usually someone random from the audience holding our light and pointing it in a direction. It wasn't even on a stand. It was, we found a large film light from somewhere, and someone used to just hold it and point it. And so it was just blinding.
Oh my God.
And then when someone spilled, during the act, some liquid went on the light, and then there was a big explosion and everyone was in the dark.
Oh my God. Wow.
I think the show was people holding up lighters.
Oh wow, that is funny.
Somewhere. It was...
Yeah, I'm gonna.
Because Holly Penfield was on stage, and so what footage someone had, it must be people holding lighters, and then very quiet, muffled owls as people started getting fingers.
Wow, committed to the show, right?
But you don't have another show like it.
No,
that's half the fun.
Yeah.
Of course, I'd be very cross if something like that happened now.
But yeah, all the performances, they're just completely different, aren't they? In the ballet company, it was, steps didn't always go the way you wanted. But, and sometimes the tech didn't go quite as well. But it was all pretty much the same, and you can rely on that. You can sort of take it for granted. But with that story you told, I don't know, it just makes it more intimate and special with the audiences that you have, that there's not such a big divide between you and them. It's almost like they're brought into it more.
I think the word you're looking for is chaotic.
Okay, I'm trying to sugarcoat it.
It is, though. It is beautiful.
Utter chaos.
It's why I love it. It is why I love cabaret.
So do you design and create your costumes?
Almost all of them.
Really? Even the props and...
So like with the theatre, I would have done a schematic design, and Sean would have built it, and and also a friend of mine would have painted it. There were some things like my small Fabergé egg, that the shell, no pun intended, was a prop that another performer had sold on to me, and then I made my own version of it. But the moon again was something that I made a small version of how I wanted it to work, and then someone made a larger version. So I'm not always in the workshop making something, but often if I'm not on stage, I am like I am going to do today. After doing this, I will go home, we will turn on the sewing machine, and we will carry on making a magic prop, because that's what we're doing this week.
Oh, amazing! So you've got a new act in the pipeline then?
It's not new. It's part of the stuff I do with my partner, the Glamorous. So it's part of we perform in our touring show, West End Magic, which was his show. And so we do like to add, just whenever we can add something new in. And that's difficult. You're saying earlier about knowing the environment you're going to perform in. And sometimes we know a lot about where the audience is going to sit and what the theatre is going to bring, but sometimes they haven't sent a picture of, what it's actually like to perform there. And sometimes, I spend a lot of time on Google Maps, maybe going, well, what's the backstage access like? Sometimes they don't tell you that everything has to load on through the front and be lifted. So if we're doing that ourselves as well, we have to know that what we're bringing, I will, be one of the people that will have to lift it. So we'll have to be able to check that that's something I can do. And beautiful comedian in Bath, as you all know, doesn't have any legs. So we were actually planning to do this new act last week, but even when we were doing it, and I will always make stuff as if I will have to do it for then. But I was thinking we can't actually do that there because we can't fit the prop in the venue.
Oh my gosh!
And we wouldn't have been able to. But sometimes you don't know until you're there, so we like to be prepared.
But I love how hands-on you are with the construction of it, even if you're not making the props. You're fully behind it, and it's your vision. And you're making like a prototype, aren't you, before it's then made properly? I think that's really, really amazing.
Thank you. I think it's the most joy I have. I mean, I enjoy doing things on stage, but I won't always be doing that. I did presume that I'd be retired at this point.
Really?
Yeah. 22 years is a long time in any career, particularly any kind of thing that involves dance or actual stage performance, and especially as a woman. You do kind of think, that there will be times that I will have to sit out, and that hasn't happened yet, but at some point it is an inevitability. So I don't think I'll feel like I'm missing anything.
Yeah, you've had a good run. I mean, 22 years, that's such a long time. I know we were talking before the show about seeing you perform at the Rosewood, but then, when we figured out that was possibly 10 years ago, I'm just like, where's the time?
To me, that feels recent.
God. Is it tiring to be working evenings for that amount of time?
It is, and I couldn't do what I used to do when I was younger, and especially there is a drive for fees shouldn't have for now there are more venues. I really don't feel like fees for everyone should have gone down, but they do seem to have. So there are a lot of things that I don't take on, but some people do run between 4 shows in one night and enjoy it, and I wouldn't be able to do that. I can do maybe like one or two, maybe like if I'm doing a run of shows, I can do a few evenings. I love doing matinees, but sometimes things are even more durational. This weekend it's Marissa's show, Showwomen. Marissa Clancy's Showwomen, so it's part of the Brighton Festival, and because it is a tribute to all like female presenting people who've worked in shows forever. So it's all people from different disciplines. Many of us haven't worked together before because people say hire only one of any one particular. Like there'll only be one aerialist, there'll be one danger performer. I'm sure there's a lot to say about it, but it's that kind of thing. So we'll be doing almost like shows, not Coney Island style, but I think the shows start about 1 p.m. and finish about 9 p.m. We'll be doing that for 2 days, and each set of performance will be about an hour, I think. So it's a durational piece. God, that's tiring.
Yeah, I can imagine. Gosh, I mean, I didn't dance for that long, but I can imagine that just having to keep things fresh, having to just keep going and find new ways to make old acts come to life again. This is just my interpretation of it, because if you're doing the same act for so long, I mean, maybe it is because it's so versatile depending on where you're doing it, that maybe that's what keeps it fresh.
I mean, I suppose I don't know. Every time I go on stage, I do feel like it's like a special play. Not to sound cheesy. So it's I've always said it's always like the same place. It's like when you go on stage, it's like you've gone through a magic doorway. And I think I used to think that a lot with Spiegel tent shows, because it is always, the venue it's identically designed. And I remember commuting on my day off from a 6-week run in Edinburgh to do another show for the company I was the creative director with, the Black Cat Cabaret on the South Bank in London, but it was the same venue on my day off. And there was a moment when I was just thinking, it feels like I could have just walked through the door in the other venue on stage and it would have been the same one. It's like there is only one stage, but there are many entrances. And you just go on and you find that place. But sometimes you don't always find that place. And that is the goal, isn't it? But when you're in that place, it doesn't matter where you are. It's a bit of a surreal
Yeah.
to be.
Like my cog's going now. I'm literally going one stage and many doors. Like that's a great almost analogy, isn't it? That you can go through the many doors depending on how you're feeling, your approach and everything. But when you get on that stage, you're there. You're home.
There's a story of the magic toy shop I really liked when I was a kid, and it's one day you open the door and you're in this magic toy shop, and then it moves. It moves around, but unfortunately, some days you can't really find the door, and you're on stage and you're doing the best you can, but you're like, I'm not in the place. I'm in a different place that looks like the place, but it's not. It's not the place where you give the performance. That's the way life is, unfortunately.
Yeah. What's been your biggest inspiration?
I'd say my imagination. It's because I'm always imagining not just what I, things that you can create from nothing, but I'm always trying to imagine what other people feel like, and things like what it must have felt like to do a particular performance or see a particular performance for the first time, for everything that's quite familiar or like a trope to be absolutely new, so I'm always trying to imagine what that must have felt like and to capture that first time feeling. So it's probably in a way it's the job itself, really.
Yeah. I mean, so many people have different inspirations to creating something, and it's very personal as well, isn't it? And it's what you can bring to life and what resonates with you. I mean, I never really had the joy of that. I did the steps that were previously choreographed, and then when I had my very, very short stint in burlesque, I was kind of almost going off the back of steps that I'd already done. And it just felt like I said on a recent podcast that it felt like there was my act and there was me, and it wasn't working congruently. And it almost, I was trying to make something work without really having the inspiration or the vision. And I think that people can tell. I think you really, really have to bring it to life with something that you're passionate about.
Well, for a start, I'm sure that's not true, but I think you're like, I'm sure it was like that's it. You feel like you do feel a bit sometimes like everything's borrowed from a library. It's almost impossible to create something that's completely new. Even things that are revolutionary, we're all kind of almost trying to recreate a feeling that you get in nature or life. You're recreating from a library of, the natural world and emotion. And it doesn't make it any less heartfelt or real. The fact that that's how it works.
Yeah, I love that. Recreating a memory. That's what it is.
And making we'll bring other people in on it.
Yeah.
I'm sure you were doing that, even if you're using the steps that you use to access that emotion.
Yeah, I think I just, I didn't have enough time to really build my brand and go with it. I was trying to make it happen fast, but that's just my experience of it. And I'm sure I'm not the last one that will feel that way. I just think that, I think your brand is really, really important. And it's so interesting that your name was given to you, but it was based on a brand you already had, something that was kind of you.
I think it's really interesting that you say it. It's a shame that people feel like there's the pressure to build a brand, but not just the place to play. I don't do so well on the internet really anymore. I used to really enjoy using Instagram like a visual diary, a library to kind of draw from. But I find myself interacting with that idea of branding less and less as I get older. I find it very intrusive to the nature of being creative. Like every moment I feel like I have to spend doing that. And I feel it's bad that some people find it really fun, and you see them having like online fun. I don't know how to describe it. And I find it, maybe it's just the way my brain is wired. I find it takes away from my pleasure rather than adds to it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. And unfortunately, I think if I wouldn't be starting out as a performer today. I can tell you that. I don't think I'd want to.
I guess there's so much pressure on being seen, being, you know, on social media, being seen in that way. And it's almost the effort putting on social media that's a really important part of it. But you're right. It's the creative bit is the bit on stage, the bit that's not constantly being documented. I mean, sometimes, yes, but you're in that zone. I mean, I love the podcast. I love the podcast recording, but the putting together the promos and doing all of that, it eats into my day. I love that I'm promoting someone else, but at the same time, I'm like, I just want to be doing the recording and all the fun creative bits and bonding with my guest and bringing it to life. And I love all that. And then when I'm sat on my phone, I'm going, this isn't really me. What's your favorite part of creating an act?
I think it is creating it. I'm trying to adjust how I work at the moment, because I do remember, before me and my partner lived together, so there was a tendency sometimes, I remember something up all night because I felt I had to be making some new work, and I'd be just pushing myself to meet this deadline that a lot of the time people don't really care about anyway, because they want to see the same thing again. But there is nothing like when something is complete and you haven't done it yet. But I think maybe that's also a little bit of revision, because then there's also when you're not quite sure how it's going to go and which bits are going to go wrong, however much you've rehearsed it, or which bits aren't going to get quite the reaction you thought they were going to get.
Yeah,
but I do. It is I find the greatest satisfaction for me is actually making the pieces, because that's something solid. I suppose it's like an edited podcast. Whereas as a performance, it's only as good as the last performance. You can never predict and control how it's going to go.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And with the acts, do you have like a concept, or do you hear a piece of music that moves you? What's the first thing that happens when you're creating an act?
I think a lot of the time, because I used to make so many, so even now I'm still going back and revising things. Sometimes it can be, sometimes I'll try and do something new just because it's different from what I've done before. I suppose like also kind of supply and demand.
Yeah.
There is demand for a different style of act these days sometimes, and you do have to keep up. But often I'll have like a few different ideas. I'll know the type of movement I want to use. I'll know some of the references that I'll want to pull from, and I'll know the story that I want to tell. And I'll usually have to wait for a while and there'll always be something that happens, like I'll go to a particularly good exhibition, or I've read a book, and I'll be like, okay, that's the trigger, and there'll have to be a number of different things that come together to make that happen. And then I'll be off, and it usually won't be a very long process.
Oh, really? Yeah, because I was always driven by the music, but I guess the concept, the idea is sort of it's the bit that's the triggering bit, isn't it? And then I guess if you have the sort of movements, but the things that are going to engage with the audience. But like you said, you still don't know the reaction that you're going to get. You know what you feel is great, but you don't know. When a podcast with David Bintley, he was saying, some things that you feel are going to work, they don't always work.
And it's a very hard thing to get right, and especially you saying music. So sometimes I think the music is part of the process, and I will be listening to it and going through possible choreographies in my head while I'm making it. It's part of the meditative process. But Oliver and myself, we're actually at the moment picking some music, and you're kind of thinking about like all the. Like sometimes the rules that you need, like, we know, in our case, we know where it's going to go in the show as well. Like, we can't put a piece of music like this, like these kinds of pieces that we use, because at that point in the show that it would be too slow. So we need it to be like this, and we'll need it to have like two climaxes. And he really enjoys editing. He loves editing film, show reels. He really enjoys getting into.
Right. Yes, I'll get the contacts after the show.
If he had the time, he would just be sitting there like making.
Oh wow!
Like all the time. Whereas I'm a bit less. I used to like making short films for each piece that was based thematically, but not the actual act, because I had to advertise it.
That's really good. I can imagine.
I really enjoy that. But
yes.
I don't have the time these days.
It's almost like a mini trailer. Yeah, I like that. I really like that. So it's not just you're recording something that's on stage, you're bringing so much to it. You can have close-ups and yeah.
With the director, sometimes I used to call which shots I wanted myself, like cast other people in it as well. So I'd be interacting in the character of that performance.
I think people should bring that back as a way to promote themselves, because actually that's genius. And because you want to literally have something that people cannot say no to. Like, I want to know more about this character.
Unfortunately, and it's not exactly things were better in my day, but people often ask for recently like things that I don't have, which is they want like a little clip of an act, and it has to be the act, and they also want it in a format that goes on Instagram, because I started film editing. Everything I ever will ever shoot is in landscape, because that's what a film looks like. Now most media for that kind of thing is consumed on a phone, which is a different format.
You have to turn the phone around. And under a minute. Or under 2 minutes, and
I always thought like a show should be under a minute anyway.
Yeah, true. Sometimes I do struggle with that because I'm in the zone. But it's leaving people hanging.
That's the length of the song. Unfortunately, the reality is where people just don't watch it for longer than a minute.
No,
because
attention spans have got shorter.
Videos to go through.
This is true,
and many decisions to make.
So I guess you have to take that into account with the. It's the bookers. You want them to stay engaged and leave them wanting more.
Well, the business of burlesque and performance is a completely different thing from the art of burlesque and performance.
Yeah. I don't know how I feel about that. I think that it's such a beautiful, beautiful thing. It's magic. And perhaps it loses its magic with everything and the social media. I mean, I do feel like it's changed a lot of the industry.
I do. Not that I miss like the days gone by that I don't. Obviously, I wasn't around for anyway. But the business of variety agents, like a lot of the time, the things that you're asked to do, I do think at the back of my head, but that shouldn't be my job. 50 years ago, someone would have had that would have been what other people's jobs were also to do. But you are doing everything. And it must have been so nice to just have your manager and your booker and just roll it like they take notes at the theatre, see what changed from last time you went through. Would they book this act again? Did it go down well with the audience? Yes or no, and leave you with the time to actually perfect the act.
That sounds amazing. Yeah, it's all just so fast paced now, isn't it? Just so that little bit more time and more personable relationships with your performers. God, there's so much. I mean, and obviously you have to feel fresh and like you're in the mood to do these performances, and you travel all over the place, don't you?
That is part of the job. I mean, I think I definitely feel lucky, and I've done a lot of things, but like working with my partner in magic, and we go to there's a lot of magic clubs and societies, and we went to a lot of things over the past few years because he was the president of the British wing of the International Brotherhood of Magicians, and you hear a lot of lectures, and particularly from well-respected people who've been some of them have been working since the 40s. They're still around, and when you hear about what they did, their work ethic, and they would they do 2 theatres and a restaurant and a nightclub in one day, and they do that for 4 or 5 days a week. And you see footage of them working in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and they do keep the energy up. And you go, well, it's possible. You must be able to do it. And you're sitting at the solo stage going, I really don't feel like I want to go on stage right now. I'm very tired. And that's the job, is pulling that energy as if it's the first show of the week when it's actually the last show of the week.
Yeah. So what's your mentality to keeping the energy going. If you're on a train, you've done several shows, you're tired.
I think generally at that point there is no energy. It just the faith that when it comes down to it, like even if the tech rehearsal has been just going, I'm just going to test my shoes out on this stage. All that's gonna, and just make sure everything else happens right. It's just still being confident that there is something in the bag for the performance, and there always is. So
that's really interesting.
That is.
I'd love to know what the secret is. I mean, sometimes I think, is it the music? Is it the audience seeing their reaction to you on the stage? It's almost like that it fuels you, perhaps. But for me personally, it's as soon as I start to hear music, I'm like, I'm there, I'm awake. But it's different for everybody.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, because sometimes I suppose that you do have that when you hear music and you're dancing a little bit inside already, aren't you?
Yeah, I definitely have that. I was listening to drum and bass in the car this morning doing the school run. I know. But it just is, I was really tired. I put that on and I was like, I'm awake. I'm ready to start the day. It's funny. But that's personal to me, what fuels me. But I mean, do you have any idea what it is? What's in the bag?
I think if any of us kids bottle it, we'd make millions. I mean, that's the thing. I think some people are able to do it and some people aren't. And I've known lots of people working in all different forms of theatre. And I wish I could remember her name because I shared a house with her for a whole year once. And I remember she went to Mount View. I remember her first job was she was Cosette in Les Mis and the West End. That was her first job. And then she did High School Musical.
Wow.
And I just don't see, the reason I don't remember her name is I don't see it anywhere. And I think she was very talented, but I think maybe she was burnt out within 10 years.
Yeah.
I don't exactly have a stay-at-home lifestyle. I like to, especially since COVID, me and my partner, we like to get out more because working for as long as we have, you realise that you don't get invites. Like no one asks you what if you want to come out on a Friday night. Not necessarily, going out clubbing those days. Maybe, I don't know. We've got Wonderwall tickets, but it's just it's people don't ask you anymore because they assume you can't do it. So we like to make sure that we keep up with friends, and that can be the tiring parts. And you just want to sit on the sofa and we haven't even watched Doctor Who. Everyone else is there, but we haven't had that time off.
Yeah.
So it's just keeping going. Is it?
Yeah, I was picturing being in a seat that's got like a little booster, so you're on a seat that's got the ejector on it, so it's just like you sit down and way off I go again. Yeah, I wonder if you had more time to sit, you'd go, oh, I like this too much.
I used to always have something to do with my hands, and I've tried not to do that because I realised that I was getting very burnt out. We did actually end up. I've had this conversation with quite a few people. They're going, and lockdown made us really appreciate taking things slowly and quality of life. Like, and we did that. But we also set an alarm for 8 a.m. every morning to get up and rehearse and produce a brand new show at the end of every week. And then I'm thinking, what were we doing? But we did it. But we didn't come out of COVID any more rested, and there were definitely some costumes also that still didn't get washed.
It's hard though. I think I don't want to touch on COVID too long, but I think it's interesting how people did use that time. I didn't want to sit and appreciate. I wanted to keep busy. I wanted to, because I like being all go. I'm not great at sitting around. I've realized that more recently is I sit down and then I'm like, oh God, I should be doing something. No, that's not, you should sit down and have some time, but I do like to be busy. And I feel like the more you are busy, the more you can be busy and you have the energy to be busy. But when you go the other way, that energy that you then have to burn up takes a bit more out of you.
Well, I mean, that's it. As well, to acknowledge as well, we're in a very privileged position because we do live in the countryside on a farm. And us kind of doing nothing or forcing ourselves to have a routine was very different from friends of mine who for a while weren't, if there was, they were very rigidly sticking to the rules, and it was just four walls. And even just a walk to another building on a farm in fresh air is something, and it's a lot better for your mental health.
What's your favorite thing about being a performer, about being Vicky Butterfly?
I think my favourite thing is that there's always, I don't know how many thoughts about it. Life is certainly not boring. Sometimes you kind of use it's social media it's a thief of joy. So you're like, well, that person's doing this thing. I wish I could have done that thing. And then you think about all of the hundreds and thousands of things you did that lots of people never got, that the people never get to do at all. Yeah. The secret ways you see things, like all the memories you do have, they're pretty special. I think so sometimes I'd love the idea of routine, but I don't think I do very well at it.
But it is really special to be a performer. It really, really is.
It's an honour that people, after so long, it's because you're only doing it as long as people will have you doing it. Really, it's very. I suppose you could go into the middle of a forest and do your show by yourself if you wanted, but it's just you're aware that it's privilege, and it's in a way it's always borrowed time as well.
Yes, but 22 years and people are still. You're so busy. That speaks volumes about you as a performer.
I don't think I'm that busy. I'm not as busy. I don't feel like I'm that busy.
Calmed it down a little.
There's always something. Whenever I do feel that I'm blessed. That sounds very cheesy, but every time I think, the opportunities have presented themselves, and then they'll just when I need them, there'll be something else. But when I feel that the best ones are behind me, and it's this is something I've done before, and it's it's paying well, but it's not. And then sometimes when it's so regular that you kind of go, well, it's a once in a life thing. Could anything get that good? Would they have me back? Yes, you never know.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You never ever know. But
very unpredictable, which is very tiring.
Would you say that's the most tiring part? Is it the unknown? Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Gosh. And what does the future hold? I'm just picturing maybe 5 years that you're thinking of going more into the building, the shows. It's something. I suppose it's something I have done, like with lots of companies that I've worked with. I suppose just more of the same, maybe. Yeah.
Maybe more school runs.
Amazing. Vicky, you've been wonderful. I feel so relaxed in your presence. I feel really you bring such a lovely, calming energy, and it's been a pleasure to have you on my show today. It's been lovely to talk and just to hear even more about the wonders of Vicky Butterfly. You're incredible.
Thank you very much.
A special thank you to Vicky Butterfly. I was left feeling so calm and just so happy. She's got such a lovely way of speaking and just such a wonderful, wonderful person. If you haven't seen this beautiful performer, you must go and check her out. I will put everything into the show notes. She really is phenomenal and just a wonderful, wonderful guest. If you want to be a guest on my show, you're in the performing arts and you have a story, this is the perfect platform for you. I will continue to hold it as a supportive place where you can just have the freedom to speak about things that have inspired you over the years, things that you feel need to be spoken about that simply don't get spoken about. So you just send me an email to candy.presents.podcast@gmail.com and I will get in touch with you and we will just take it from there. As always, please subscribe as it really, really does help to boost the show. And just thank you all for your support. Thank you, thank you, thank you.